Warriors of the Atom, Masters of the Invisible. Chapter 1. The Glitch in the World. The world glitched at 2:43 p.m. Phoenix was standing on the corner of 9th and Langston, waiting for the light to change when it happened. One moment the city was humming, cars crawling past, a bus coughing to a stop, some guy blasting a podcast about nutrition and dopamine. The next, silence. Not silence like quiet. Silence like the air itself had forgotten how to vibrate. She blinked. A pigeon frozen mid-wing beat hovered above the traffic light. The man crossing the street, the one who just dropped his phone, was suddenly already on the other side, holding it. Her heart skipped, then everything snapped back. Sound returned like a wave crashing all at once. The honk, the bus exhaling, the birds scattering overhead. The light turned green. Nobody else reacted. Phoenix looked around. People just moved like nothing had happened. No one glanced up, no one hesitated, like the glitch didn't belong to the world, only to her. It wasn't the first time. That night in her apartment, she lit the candle again. No lamps, no screens, just the flicker of flame and the notebook she'd been filling with impossible memories. Street shadows that didn't line up with their sources. Raindrops that hovered before falling. Conversations she remembered that hadn't happened yet. She turned to the latest page. They will tell you matter is solid, but matter is only light, spinning in place. The Way, Fragment 3. It had been mailed to her anonymously 3 weeks ago. An envelope, no return address, just one word on the back. Fang. There was a knock at the door. Phoenix's eyes snapped to it. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her phone was off. She stepped quietly to the peephole. No one. Another knock. Softer. Not on the door this time. On the window. She turned slowly. A man stood on the fire escape, calm, arms folded. His face was half lit by the candle glow. He wore a dark coat, rain beating on the shoulders. His eyes met hers through the glass. He spoke, but she couldn't hear him. Then he lifted a small white card to the window, one word printed on it. Monastery. Phoenix stared at the card, unmoving. The word shimmered faintly in the candlelight, not glowing, just shifting, like the ink didn't sit on the paper but danced with it, as if even the card itself wasn't entirely real. She opened the window. "You've seen it," the man said calmly, "haven't you?" She hesitated. "Seen what?" "The fracture," he said, "the truth underneath." His voice wasn't threatening, just matter of fact, like someone pointing out the moon in the sky. Up close, he looked older than she first thought. Late 40s, maybe. Calm eyes, no fear, not a cop, not a weirdo. Someone who'd seen the world crack open and never looked away. She kept the window between them. "Who sent you?" "I didn't come to pull you," he said. "Only to remind you." He nodded toward the card in her hand. "When you're ready, follow it. The Way will meet you." He turned, stepped backward into the shadows of the fire escape, and vanished. Not climbed, not ran. Vanished. Phoenix leaned out, heart racing. Nothing, just street noise below, the wind catching a flyer on a pole, the kind of moment you'd talk yourself out of. But she didn't, not this time. She looked again at the word on the card. Monastery. 3 days later, she stood at the base of a mountain trail, the sun barely warming the fog. The address had been scrawled on the back of the card. No coordinates, no building name, just a path, one that curved upward into mist, into silence. The deeper she walked, the quieter the world became. Her phone lost signal. Her thoughts, too, began to fade, like the buzzing in her mind had grown tired and wandered off. She didn't feel afraid. She felt stripped. At the summit, she found a gate, not iron or wood, but carved stone. ancient, smooth, covered in markings that vibrated with quiet familiarity, symbols that felt like they had always been waiting for her eyes to open. Beyond the gate, an old man sat cross-legged in a gravel courtyard. His robe was gray, his hair was white, his presence was still. He opened his eyes as she approached, as if he already knew every footstep she'd taken. "Welcome," he said. "You've come far." Phoenix looked around. "Is this the monastery?" "No," he said, smiling. "This is only the entrance." She looked behind him, expecting a grand hall, a towering building, anything. There was only open sky, stone paths, wind. No temple, no monks. "I don't understand." "You will," he said, "when you stop trying to." She hesitated. "Are you Fang?" He stood slowly, brushed the dust from his robe, and walked to the nearby stone wall. He placed a hand on it. "You see this stone as solid," he said gently, "but in truth, it's just light, spinning." He turned to her. "Once you are one with the atoms, they will move at your will." Then he pressed his palm into the wall, and it parted like mist. His arm passed through as if it were made of smoke and sunbeams. Not a trick, not illusion, just truth. Phoenix didn't breathe. She had seen the world glitch, but this was the first time she believed it was supposed to. Master Fang stepped back. "Come. Your questions brought you here," he said. "Now it's time to let them go." Chapter 2. The Arrival. The monastery wasn't a place. That was the first thing Phoenix realized. It had no walls that stayed anyway. One moment she stood in a stone corridor surrounded by pines. The next she turned and saw open fields where there should have been trees. Rooms shifted, shadows flowed backward. The wind carried whispers that weren't quite voices. She didn't walk through doors. She remembered being inside them. Whatever this place was, it didn't obey the laws she'd grown up believing. But one thing stayed constant. Master Fang. He moved like silence incarnate, present in every space without ever entering it. Sometimes she thought he wasn't teaching at all, just being. But every look, every word felt carefully placed, like seeds dropped in still soil. On the second morning, she found the others. The courtyard was a ring of pale stone, perfectly smooth, as if the wind itself had polished it over centuries. Phoenix stood at its edge, unsure if she was meant to speak. 3 others were already there. One stood with arms folded, a black scarf wrapped around his knuckles. His stance was coiled, calm but coiled. His name was Blade. He didn't smile, didn't blink much either. The second was a woman kneeling in the center, eyes closed. She wore headphones around her neck, even though there was no sound. Violet, sharp, lean, and always observing from behind eyes that looked like they saw 5 steps ahead. The third sat near the edge of the ring, tossing small pebbles toward the center like he was skipping stones across a lake only he could see. He looked up when she arrived and grinned. "You're the last," he said. "Welcome to wherever this is." White Wolf. That wasn't a nickname. That was his name. Or so he said. When she asked where he came from, he simply said, "The outside edge." "Phoenix," she said quietly. "Figures," Violet murmured. "You've got that fire in the ribs vibe." Master Fang appeared behind them. No footsteps, no warning. "This ring," he said, gesturing to the courtyard floor, "is not for your feet. It is for your illusions." He stepped into the center. "When you speak, speak from what you know. When you're silent, listen to what is." Blade tilted his head. "Is this the part where we fight?" "No," Fang said. "This is the part where you see who's still fighting themselves." He pointed to a bowl of water resting at the edge of the ring. Still, clear. "Lift the water without touching it. he said. Phoenix stepped forward, hesitant. Blade narrowed his eyes and focused. Violet tilted her head slightly, calculating. White Wolf didn't move. They stared. Nothing happened. Violet frowned and looked at Fang. There's no trick here. No field projector, no hologram. I checked. This is real water in a real bowl. Fang simply nodded. Correct. Now lift it. Phoenix stared harder. Nothing. Not even a ripple. Blade exhaled through his nose and clenched his fists. This is pointless. White Wolf finally spoke. Maybe it's not about the water. They all turned to him. He smiled, calm and clear-eyed. Maybe it's about seeing that we're the ones still trying. Fang smiled, not with pride, with recognition, like he'd been waiting for someone to say it. You do not lift the water, he said softly, because the water is not separate from you. He stepped into the circle, moved to the bowl, and sat beside it. His hand hovered over the surface but didn't touch it. You see this bowl, he said, and your mind labels it separate, solid, still. But the bowl is atoms, the water is atoms, so are you. And atoms are? Light, Phoenix whispered. Spinning. Fang met her gaze. Yes, not particles, not matter, only light, spinning in patterns of agreement. Your agreement. He looked to the others. When you believe something is separate, it becomes heavy. When you remember it's you, it moves with you. He turned his palm upward, and the water slowly rose in a narrow, spiraling column. Not splashing, not floating, dancing. Violet's jaw tightened. There's a magnet under the stone. There is a magnet, Fang said calmly, but not beneath the stone. He tapped his chest. Here. The water coiled downward like smoke returning to a fire. Silence held for a moment, then Fang stood. That is enough for today. He began to walk away, then stopped. One of you will burn. One of you will dissolve. One of you will vanish. And one of you. He looked back over his shoulder, gaze resting on Blade. We'll have to choose who you are before the Blade chooses for you. Then he was gone. The four sat in quiet tension. Phoenix's thoughts churned. Burn? Dissolve? What did it mean? Blade was already pacing again, jaw tight. This is a game, he muttered. A trick, a philosophy class dressed in robes. You saw what he did, Phoenix said. That wasn't tech. Blade shot her a look. Or maybe it was. That water didn't levitate on good vibes. Maybe not, White Wolf said, eyes still on the bowl. But it listened. That night, Phoenix dreamed she was inside a sea of stars, except the stars were atoms spinning around her, whispering things she didn't understand. She wasn't floating in space. She was the space. Chapter 3. The First Awakening. The morning air at the monastery tasted like rain that hadn't fallen yet. Phoenix stood in the courtyard alone, barefoot on the cold stone. The others were still in their rooms, or lost somewhere in the shifting grounds. Here, in this silent circle of white gravel, it felt like time had stopped trying to be linear. She closed her eyes and breathed. Not because Master Fang had told her to, not because it was part of the training, because the air was different here. And when she inhaled slowly enough, she could feel it move through her bones like light. Something inside her had begun to hum since the water lesson. She hadn't told the others, but ever since that moment, watching the column rise, seeing it spin in the air as if it knew her, she felt something echoing behind her heartbeat, like an ancient tuning fork, like the atoms in her body were no longer convinced they were separate. Behind her, a pebble skittered. She opened her eyes. Blade stood there, arms folded. "You're up early," he said flatly. "So are you." "I don't sleep much." He walked past her and picked up a staff resting against the wall, the one they'd each been given when they arrived, supposedly handcrafted by monks who understood grain structure on a subatomic level. Phoenix didn't know if that was just poetic, but it felt alive. "You ever wonder why we're really here?" Blade asked. "All the time." "I think Fang wants to break us." Phoenix turned to him. "You think that's what this is? Some test?" "I think it's a war," Blade said, "and we're being trained for it. Enlightenment is just the weapon." Before she could answer, something rippled through her vision, a shimmer, like the world took a breath. She looked at the staff in Blade's hand. It was glowing, not with fire, not with electricity, with movement. She could see the atoms, not with her eyes, but with some sense behind them. The staff wasn't solid, it was patterns, rhythm, spinning light holding shape, and it was listening to her. "Blade," she started, but he didn't see it. He twirled the staff and smirked. "If this is the weapon, we better learn how to use it." Phoenix stepped forward. "Put it down." He frowned. "Why?" "I don't think it's meant to be used like that." The staff pulsed. A tiny flicker of gold passed through the wood like a nerve firing. Blade didn't notice. Phoenix reached out, not with her hand, but with her attention, with the vibration in her ribs. The staff lifted, right out of Blade's grip, floated between them, silent. He stared. "What the—" Phoenix's eyes widened, breath shallow. She wasn't doing it, not like moving a muscle. It was more like the staff was choosing to respond to something she'd finally stopped resisting. It drifted to her palm and rested there, warm. Blade backed away, stunned. "What the hell was that? I didn't mean to—" "You just pulled that thing out of my hand." "I didn't pull anything." "Don't lie to me." He turned and stormed away. Phoenix stood frozen, staff still humming faintly in her grip. The atoms were still moving just under the surface, and then, as quickly as it came, the sensation faded. The staff went still, the hum went quiet. The world returned. By the time the others arrived in the courtyard, Blade was already sitting alone on the far edge, jaw clenched, staring at nothing. Phoenix sat cross-legged, the staff resting across her knees, still warm. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Violet arrived first, saw Blade, saw Phoenix. Her eyes narrowed. "What happened?" she asked flatly. "Ask her," Blade muttered. Violet looked at Phoenix. "You did something." "I felt something. I didn't control it." Violet stepped closer, crouched, studied the staff like a scientist with a live wire. "This thing moved?" Phoenix nodded. "By itself. Number by resonance." Violet blinked. "By what?" Before she could answer, a faint bell rang from somewhere deeper in the monastery. Then Master Fang stepped into the courtyard, just as calm and silent as always, as if he'd been standing in the mist the whole time. He looked at Phoenix. "You've touched the edge of the field," he said. "The field?" Violet asked. Fang looked to her. "The place where all things stop pretending to be separate." Violet stood up, crossed her arms. She moved a staff. "Is that what this is about?" "She didn't move it," Fang said. "She remembered it." Blade stood abruptly. "No offense, Master, but I'm starting to feel like none of this is real, that you're speaking in riddles while we're left guessing what's actually happening here." Fang turned toward him slowly. "You still believe reality is made of objects," he said. "You still believe it must be pushed to respond. That's why it resists you." He walked over to the stone wall. The same wall he'd phased through on Phoenix's first day. "You see this?" he said. They nodded. "It looks like stone, feels like stone, but it is not solid. It is light, spinning." He placed his palm against it, and it rippled. The surface shimmered like disturbed water. His hand passed through, then his arm, then his shoulder, and then he was gone. Gone through a wall. Violet stepped back. Blade cursed under his breath. Then his voice echoed faintly from behind them. "Once you are one with the atoms, they will move at your will." They turned. Fang was standing in the archway on the other side of the courtyard. He smiled. Class dismissed. Later that night, Phoenix sat alone with the staff beside her. She no longer felt like it was just a tool. It wasn't a weapon either. It was a reminder that everything she'd believed was firm, solid, logical, fixed, was just light agreeing to hold a pattern. And now that agreement had started to fall apart. She didn't know if that meant she was waking up or losing her mind. Chapter 4. The Attack on the Monastery. The wind shifted. White Wolf felt it before the others. He'd been sitting at the edge of the northern slope, watching the trees sway in rhythms most people missed, listening to the heartbeat beneath the monastery. But now the beat had gone still. He stood slowly, eyes narrowing. Birds weren't singing. Even the air was holding its breath. In the courtyard, Phoenix trained alone. The staff floated just above her palm, not spinning, just swaying like it was waiting for a decision. A sound rippled through the stones, a frequency she didn't hear but felt in her jaw. She turned, and then they were there. Shadow walkers, 6 of them, clad in matte black armor that shimmered like glass in a dream. No footsteps, no noise, their faces hidden behind veils of shifting digital static. They didn't move like people. They moved like software given shape. The first struck, a blade of violet energy slashing through the air. Phoenix ducked, rolled, and called the staff to her hand. It snapped into her grip, vibrating like it already knew the rhythm of the battle. Another shadow came from the left and was intercepted mid-strike by Blade, appearing from nowhere, a second staff spinning like a wind turbine in his hands. "They found us," he growled. "No," said Violet, arriving at a sprint. They were invited. The shadow walkers closed in. White Wolf dropped from the top of the archway like a ghost, landing silently beside them. With one breath, he stepped into the fight, not attacking, but redirecting, letting the energy of his enemies spin past him, using it to unbalance them. Even so, the numbers were growing. 12, then 15, slipping in and out of the edges of reality like flickers in a dream. "This isn't just a raid," Violet snapped, hacking the air with a stolen blade. "They're after something." "No," said Phoenix. "They're after someone." And then everything stopped. A pulse of silence spread outward like a wave. The shadow walkers froze, mid-strike, mid-leap, mid-breath. At the center of the courtyard stood Master Fang, still, calm, unmoving. His presence alone had silenced them. One of the walkers twitched, as if struggling against gravity itself. Fang raised a single hand, not to strike, but to be seen. "You do not belong here," he said gently. "You are fighting shadows within shadows." Then came a voice, calm, cold, familiar. Still the poet, even in the storm. From behind the ring of frozen soldiers stepped a tall man in a black coat. No mask, no veil. Just a face Phoenix didn't recognize, but felt somehow. Snake. Eyes like burnt steel, a slight smile playing on lips that never learned to love. "Snake," Master Fang said softly. No fear, no surprise. "You've changed." Snake stepped forward through the circle of frozen soldiers. Time changes everything, old man, but I didn't come to talk philosophy. Blade bristled. You know him. Used to, Fang said. Snake's gaze scanned the students, Violet tightening her grip on a stolen blade, White Wolf motionless like a tree in storm, Phoenix holding her staff like it was part of her arm. So these are your disciples, he said, your little experiments. They are seekers. They're liabilities. Snake glanced at a device on his wrist. You see, unlike you, I don't rely on presents and parables. I work with results. He pressed something. The silence shattered. The Shadow Walkers unfroze, stepping in tight. They raised their weapons. Some ignited atomic blades, pure fracture energy forged from stolen resonance fields. Others leveled guns that hummed like coiled thunder. Blade stepped forward. We can fight. No, Fang said. The word dropped like a stone in water. Then softly, the way does not fight the storm. It becomes the rain. Snake raised an eyebrow, still with the riddles. Fang turned to the students, his face calm, eyes bright. Do not come for me, he said. Come through me. Phoenix's chest tightened. What does that mean? You will know, Fang said, when you stop looking. Then he let go. Literally, his arms dropped to his sides, his eyes closed, his posture softened. He didn't resist. The Shadow Walkers surged forward, weapons raised. Not a single one touched him, because the moment they tried, their weapons shattered, not exploded, disassembled atom by atom, falling as dust, light, and silence. Still they moved, surrounding him, containing him in a pulse field. Snake smirked. I see you've still got some tricks, but this is bigger than you now, Fang. Fang opened his eyes and looked at him, not with hatred, with sorrow. You are still trying to bend the light to your will, he said, when all you had to do was remember you are it. Then, in a flash of inverted light, Fang was gone, taken. The Shadow Walkers vanished with him. The silence left behind was louder than any scream. White Wolf was the first to move, kneeling beside the broken stones where Fang had stood. He chose to go, he whispered. Violet shook her head. That was suicide. No, Phoenix said. That was faith. Blade's fists clenched. In what? Phoenix turned to him. In Us, Chapter 5. The Hidden Chamber. The monastery was too quiet, not peaceful, empty, as if when Fang was taken, he'd taken something else with him. The wind no longer hummed through the halls. The stone pathways, once alive with movement, now stretched cold and bare. The four sat in silence for what felt like hours. Then Phoenix stood. He left something behind, she said. Blade looked up. How would you know? He told me. When? She turned. When he looked at me. They searched the grounds for signs, messages, clues. Nothing moved. Until Violet stopped beneath the great bell. It sat in the center of a small stone pavilion near the cliff's edge, covered in moss, untouched by wind. This wasn't here before, she said. It was, White Wolf replied. You just couldn't see it. There were carvings on its rim, worn but not erased. As Phoenix leaned in, she saw a series of interlocking circles and, inside them, patterns of spinning light. Atom spirals, encoded symbols, motion in stillness. She reached out to touch one. The bell rang. Not loudly, but deeply, like it wasn't just vibrating the air, but vibrating them. They stepped back. The ground beneath the bell began to shift. Stone folded like paper, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into shadow. No one spoke. The staircase descended into the bones of the mountain. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became, not hot, but alive. Something buzzed around them, like standing inside a field of silent electricity. At the bottom they found a chamber, circular, carved from black stone that shimmered with silver threads, like stardust caught in obsidian. At the center, 4 pedestals. Floating above each one was a ring, not ornamental, not gold. They looked forged from compressed light, like the atoms had been braided into matter by thought alone. Each one vibrated at a different frequency. Phoenix could feel it in her bones. Each pulse was a different truth. White Wolf stepped forward, but Blade caught his arm. "Wait, we don't know what these are." "We do," Phoenix said. She stepped toward the nearest pedestal. The ring above it flickered once and dropped gently into her palm. It felt warm, like sunlight on skin, like memory. A pulse ran through her, not painful, not foreign, just true. She saw a moment, herself as a child, watching the rain hit the window, sensing the space between the drops. She hadn't thought about it in years, but now it returned, and it meant something. The ring had awakened that memory and anchored it. White Wolf approached his ring next. It hummed low and steady. When it met his skin, he exhaled, not from tension, but release, like something he'd carried for years had been lifted. Blade's jaw tightened. "Am I supposed to feel something?" Violet touched hers before he could answer. The moment it settled on her hand, her eyes widened, and for the briefest second, the threads of her hair lifted upward, as if gravity had momentarily forgotten her. Then she let go. "This isn't technology," she whispered. "It's intention." Blade stood alone. 3 rings chosen, 1 remained, and it pulsed, violently, not in harmony, in challenge. The final ring pulsed harder as Blade stepped forward. Its vibration wasn't soft like Phoenix's, or grounded like White Wolf's, or sharp like Violet's. This one trembled like it was barely contained, like it would split the mountain open if it had to. Blade didn't flinch. He reached out. The ring hovered just inches from his hand and stopped, refused him. His eyes narrowed. He tried again, forcing calm into his breath as Fang had taught. Breathe into the moment. Let it respond to you. The ring shuddered, then sparked. A flash of energy pushed him back a step. White Wolf stepped toward him. "You're forcing it." Blade clenched his fists. "I'm asking it." "No," Violet said from behind. "You're trying to control it. Same thing Snake does." Blade turned sharply. "I'm not him." "You want the ring to obey? It won't." Phoenix stepped between them. "Let it choose you. Stop trying to be chosen." Blade stared at the ring. The hum deepened, like a storm rolling just beneath the stone. Finally, he sat, cross-legged, silent. He didn't reach for it. He just breathed. The others watched. Nothing happened for several long seconds. Then the ring slowly lowered and tapped the center of his chest. A shock ran through him, straight to the spine, not pain, but fire, a forgotten heat, the memory of rage and loss, of carrying too much, of never being seen without armor. The ring hovered once more, then settled gently into his palm. He opened his eyes, quiet, changed, not humbled, centered. The chamber pulsed once, the whole room, as if acknowledging the moment. The walls shimmered faintly, and somewhere in the dark, something ancient and unseen exhaled. White Wolf stepped forward and placed a hand on the wall. "These rings were waiting for us," he said. Violet nodded. "Or for whoever we chose to become." Phoenix looked at each of them. "We're not students anymore." "No," said Blade, voice low. "We're the resistance." They returned to the surface in silence. The monastery felt different now, not empty, expectant, and waiting somewhere beyond it. Hidden in the steel and smoke of Snake's fortress was Master Fang. They all knew what had to come next. Not revenge, resonance. Chapter 6. Trials of the Rings. The monastery's sky darkened by noon, but not with storm clouds, with light. Soft waves of golden mist poured through the corridors, rising from the chamber where the rings had chosen their bearers. It wasn't visible from outside, only felt like gravity bending ever so slightly around a secret. The students didn't speak. They were already slipping inward. One by one, the rings began to hum, and the world around them faded. Pukal. White Wolf. He stood in a field. No sound, no sky, just wind and wild grass stretching forever. In front of him, a white wolf, standing still, eyes like galaxies. It moved without moving, a blink forward, then again, now standing before him. "You were never alone," the wolf said without sound. White Wolf knelt, not because he was told to, because he remembered this moment, not from life, but from before. The wolf pressed its head against his. A surge of memory returned. A father, a storm, the feeling of being left behind in the wild, but never eaten, never harmed. The forest had protected him, and now he would protect others. When he opened his eyes, tears were drying on his cheeks. Fire. Phoenix. She stood inside fire, not burning, not hot, just light. All around her, the city she had known, the people she had loved, the pain she had buried, all of it made from flame. Her younger self stood nearby, maybe 12 years old, staring at a house in flames. Her childhood home. She remembered the night, the accident, the shouting, the silence afterward. "I wanted to save them," Phoenix whispered. The girl didn't answer. She just held out her hand, and a spark floated between them. "You did save someone," the girl finally said. "You saved the part of you that refused to forget." Phoenix reached out and touched the spark. The fire collapsed inward into her chest, not consuming her, but becoming her. She was no longer afraid of burning. Violet. She stood in a white room, cold, sterile, clinical. Monitors lined the walls, each showing a different version of herself. One angry, one scared, one laughing too loud at nothing, one curled up in a hospital bed alone. She tried to shut them off, tried to walk away. The doors multiplied. None opened. "You think knowing is control," said a voice behind her. She turned. Master Fang stood there, or a version of him, staring at her with eyes made of binary code. But knowing is not mastery. Knowing is resistance dressed in facts. Violet fell to her knees. "I don't know who I am without certainty." The screens began to shut down, one by one, not from force, but from grace. Fang vanished. Only a mirror remained. In it, herself, breathing, not posing, not performing, just being. And that was enough. Blade. He stood in a room of mirrors, not sleek and polished, cracked, jagged, brutal. Each one held a different version of himself, all frozen mid-motion. One was laughing with blood on his hands. Another was kneeling over a body, screaming in silence. Another, younger, broken, begging. Blade didn't flinch. He'd seen all of them before, lived most of them, but there was one mirror, taller, darker, that had no reflection at all. He stepped toward it. "Don't," said a voice behind him. He turned and faced Snake, or what looked like Snake, but younger, before the armor, before the ego. "Do you see it now?" Snake said, voice calm. "We are not opposites. We are brothers." Blade said nothing. "You want order," Snake continued. "You want power. You want control. Because you've seen what chaos does. You've bled in it." "I don't want power," Blade said. "I want to stop needing it." Snake smiled. "Too late for that." Blade turned away and faced the black mirror. He stared. His reflection formed, slowly, not as a soldier, not as a killer, just a boy, alone in a room, holding a wooden stick like a sword, crying without sound. Blade touched the mirror. It rippled and broke, not violently, peacefully, and Snake was gone. He stood alone, staff in hand, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like a promise. After the visions. They returned to the courtyard one by one, no words spoken. White Wolf arrived first, calm, earthy, still. He sat like stone beneath a tree and closed his eyes as if listening to roots. Violet came next, a little less guarded, arms no longer crossed so tightly. She looked up at the stars without analyzing them. Blade returned last. Phoenix stood already in the center, facing the firebowl, staring into the slow flame rising from within. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. They had all gone through something only they could understand. But they felt each other differently now, like notes in the same chord, vibrating in tune. The air itself felt changed. A low hum echoed from the base of the monastery, the rings pulsing with them, or through them. The field had shifted. They were no longer just ring-bearers. They were becoming harmonics of something ancient, and the world beyond was already starting to feel it. Chapter 7. The Unseen War. The world outside the monastery didn't look different, but it felt wrong. The trees were still trees. The cities still shimmered with neon at night. But beneath it all, beneath the hum of traffic and the buzz of signals, something had changed. The four walked in silence as they descended from the mountain. Phoenix glanced at her ring. It pulsed faintly every few steps like a compass trying to find true north. White Wolf walked ahead, eyes always scanning the wind. "The earth is vibrating differently," he said. "It's not the earth," Violet replied. "It's the field. He's tampering with it." They reached the edge of the city by morning. It was too quiet, no birds, no wind. And then they saw it. A group of people, maybe 10, standing in the middle of a park, motionless, not dead, not asleep, just paused, frozen mid-step, mid-breath, a child's ice cream melting in her hand as her eyes stared blankly forward, a dog curled next to its owner's foot, unmoving, everything perfectly still, as if time had blinked and forgotten to resume. Phoenix stepped forward. "This isn't a trap, it's a warning." Blade crouched beside one of the still figures. He waved a hand in front of her eyes. No response. Then he noticed something on her wrist. A small black mark, like a barcode, but burned into the skin. He stood. "They've been tagged." "Tagged?" Violet asked. Blade nodded. "Like livestock." White Wolf closed his eyes, touching the ground with both palms. "There's a hum under them," he said. "Something vibrating just under the surface." Violet pulled out a scanner, salvaged from the monastery's tech vault. The reading showed something impossible. "A subatomic disruptor signal," she said. "Snakes suppressing their resonance. He's found others like us, and he's silencing them." Phoenix's jaw tightened. "Why?" Blade stood. "Because they might be chosen." They moved through the city in pairs. Violet and Blade tracked the signal upstream, toward the source. Phoenix and White Wolf stayed with the frozen, one by one, Phoenix placed her hand on each person's ring mark, letting her own ring vibrate slowly in sync. And one by one, the people began to blink, breathe, cry. None of them remembered what happened, only that they had felt something beautiful just before the silence swallowed them. A woman grabbed Phoenix's wrist. "Did you hear it?" she whispered. "The music." Phoenix nodded. "Yes, and you will again." Meanwhile, Violet and Blade found the source. A black transport van parked near a government tower, unmarked, silent. Inside, machinery humming quietly, wires feeding into a black cube glowing with atomic signatures. It pulsed in the same frequency as the rings, but distorted, artificial. "It's trying to cancel the field," Violet said. Blade drew his staff. "Then let's unplug it." The black van hummed like a living thing. Violet circled the disruptor cube, watching the readouts on her wrist scanner spike and twist. "This thing's built to target resonance fields. It's why those people froze. The signal overrides the atomic harmony in their cells." Blade stepped closer. In English, "It's fake silence, a forced stillness. It mutes the field before it can awaken someone." "Can we shut it down?" Violet smirked. "Oh, yeah." She pulled a small tool from her belt, an electromagnetic feedback spike. "Fang didn't just teach me metaphysics." With one motion, she jammed the spike into the base of the disruptor. The cube screamed, not with sound, but light. Blinding, pulsing, tearing through the inside of the van. Blade shoved Violet back as the cube convulsed, then imploded into dust, like a black star collapsing in on itself. Across the city, Phoenix felt the shift. The frozen began to move, not just breathe, but awaken. Some gasped, others wept. A few simply stood up and walked away in silence like nothing had happened. White Wolf watched the wind swirl through the trees. "It's starting," he said. Phoenix turned. "What is?" "The undoing." Back at the van, Violet brushed herself off. "System's dead," she said. "We're clear." "No," Blade said. "We're seen." He pointed to a blinking red light in the corner of the van, a small lens buried in the ceiling. A camera. They'd been watched. The monitor flickered to life, and Snake appeared. Just his face, just his eyes. "Hello again." His voice was calm, almost amused. "Well done, you passed the first test. I had hoped some of you would make it this far." Violet narrowed her eyes. "You did this on purpose?" "Of course. You think I didn't know where you were? Fang may have trained you in silence, but even silence leaves a footprint." "You're experimenting on people," Blade growled. "I'm saving them," Snake said. "They just don't know it yet. Not everyone is ready to awaken. Some must be. Guided." "Caged, you mean?" Phoenix said. Snake's eyes flicked toward her as if noticing her for the first time. "Ah, the fire." His smile widened. "You're getting stronger. All of you. Good. I want you strong. When you come to me, I want you awake. Only then will you understand what this is really about." The screen cut to black. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Phoenix said, "He's not just trying to stop us. He's testing us." White Wolf nodded. "Because he fears us." Violet looked to the sky, where clouds gathered like heavy thoughts. "No," she said, "because he still thinks he's one of us." Blade's grip tightened on his staff. "Then let's go show him how wrong he is." Chapter 8, The Path of Echo. The signal came through the ring. Not through technology, not through a network, but resonance. A low, pulsing tone that vibrated in Phoenix's chest while she slept. It wasn't sound, it was memory, Not hers, but someone else's, like a thought whispered through time. Follow the path of silence. The next morning, White Wolf confirmed it. I heard it too, he said. So did Blade. So did Violet. 4 rings, 1 frequency, a hidden trail, not on a map, but etched into the field. They followed it north through backroads, ruined tunnels, forests that hadn't been touched by machines in years. The deeper they went, the less the world felt like it belonged to anyone. And then, in the hollow of a broken observatory, they found her. She stood in the center of the dome, tall, wrapped in dark cloth, eyes covered by a veil stitched with starlight. Echo. She didn't turn when they entered. You took longer than I expected, she said, voice like wind over glass. Blade reached for his staff. Who are you? She lifted her head. I was like you, a bearer before the fracture. Violet stepped forward. Fracture? Echo nodded. Before Snake left the way, before he turned resonance into control. Phoenix stepped closer. You knew Fang? Echo smiled, not with joy, but with ache. Fang taught me to listen, she said, but I didn't listen in time. She led them beneath the observatory, into a chamber carved out of stone and circuitry. Ancient tech hummed beside moss-covered walls. The air buzzed like atoms in prayer. Echo gestured to the center, a projection field lit by pure resonance, forming a model of the earth, surrounded by threads of light. Every sensitive mind leaves an echo in the field, she said. These threads mark where they've been, where they are. Dozens of threads blinked in and out, like fireflies in a storm. But some, she said, pointing, are going dark, fast. Snake, Violet said. Echo nodded. He's building a grid, a synthetic resonance net. It suppresses the natural field and replaces it with his own design. If he completes it. She let the words hang. Phoenix understood. We lose the way. Echo moved like someone carrying a great weight, not on her back, but within. Her voice remained steady, but the sorrow behind it was unmistakable. I trained under Fang long before Snake, she said. We studied the field together. We didn't just read the way, we lived it. Meditation, silence, listening. She paused beside the flickering projection of the earth. I loved them both. No one spoke. Blade leaned forward slightly. Snake was one of you? He was, Echo said. He was brilliant, fast to learn, but he couldn't surrender, not to stillness, not to truth. She reached toward one of the glowing threads on the map and touched it gently. It flickered, then faded. This is what happens to those he finds now. They don't die, they disappear. Inward, their resonance overwritten, their free will unraveled. White Wolf whispered, He's not just erasing people. He's erasing their frequency. Echo nodded. And if he builds enough towers, that synthetic grid will suppress the global field. He won't need to find resonance. They'll never awaken to begin with. Violet stepped toward the map. Then we find the source. Shut it down. It's not that simple, Echo said. The field doesn't obey force. You can't just strike at the grid. If your resonance isn't aligned, it will reject you. Worse, it could use you. Blade clenched his fists. So we wait while he rewrites reality. No, Echo said. You move forward, but not as weapons. She turned toward them fully for the first time. Her veil shimmered like water under starlight. Fang let himself be taken because you weren't ready, but you are close, and now the choice is yours. She raised her hand, and the air split in two. To the left, a path of light leading through a broken mountain range pulsing with resonance towers, the synthetic grid. To the right, a quiet forest cloaked in blue mist. One path leads toward action, Echo said. Confrontation. You will reach Snake faster, but at great risk. The other leads to the Chamber of Alignment, a place that hasn't opened in decades. There, your resonance will be tested, refined. Phoenix looked at the two paths. One burned, one whispered. We don't have time, Blade said. Every second. Phoenix raised her hand. Every second spent reacting is another second we hand to him. White Wolf nodded. We can't defeat his illusion with more illusion. Violet sighed. So we let the forest test us? No, Phoenix said. We let it show us who we really are. Echo bowed slightly. Then your true war begins. Chapter 9. Into the Fracture. The path to the Chamber of Alignment was not carved. It grew. Trees twisted above them like questions left unanswered. The ground wasn't dirt or stone, but soft pulses of moss that glowed faintly with each footstep. No wind, no bird song, only the low, constant hum, like the earth itself was holding its breath. Phoenix felt her ring tremble the moment they crossed into the clearing. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. This place isn't on the map, Violet said, glancing around. It's not supposed to be, White Wolf replied. It's between places. The chamber appeared without warning. One step forward, and the world shifted. The trees fell away. The sky inverted. They stood now in a vast open space of white light and black stone. The walls pulsed with resonance patterns, not built but woven like the fabric of the field had been pulled into form just for them. At the center, a raised platform carved in a perfect spiral, 4 paths leading to it, 4 pillars rising into nothingness. Echo's voice rang inside their minds, without sound. The chamber will test not your strength, but your resonance, not what you fight, but what you still cling to. Phoenix stepped forward. The spiral lit beneath her feet, a slow gold ripple. The others followed. The moment they reached the center, the world shattered. Phoenix opened her eyes. She was back in her childhood home, except it wasn't burned. Everything was as it had been before. Her parents alive. Her brother laughing in the other room. A dinner on the table that never happened. Her heart twisted. She stepped forward, reached out, and felt the warmth of her mother's hand. The illusion didn't try to convince her. It didn't need to. You could stay, a voice whispered. Phoenix closed her eyes and let go. The warmth faded. The home vanished. She stood in the center of the chamber once more, this time taller, brighter. Something had left her, and something truer had stayed behind. White Wolf saw the forest where he had once been abandoned. Except this time, the wolves circled him, but they didn't snarl, they bowed. One by one, they touched their foreheads to the ground. He understood. He had not been left behind. He had been initiated. Violet found herself in a white room of screens again. Only this time, they were all off. No data, no readings, just herself. Breathing, no fear, no control. Only presence, and she smiled for the first time in years. Blade saw a battlefield, but not one made of blood, one made of mirrors. Each soldier he had ever fought stood before him, not with blades, but with his face. And when he dropped his staff, when he let go of the need to fight, they vanished. One by one, until only he remained. The light faded, the spiral platform reformed beneath their feet. One by one they opened their eyes. Different. Phoenix no longer burned with tension. She glowed from within. The fire was still there, but now it flowed outward instead of in circles. White Wolf's footsteps made no sound, yet the earth responded to him. Moss rose where he stepped, leaves turned when he passed. Violet stood taller, not in body but in certainty. Her ring no longer pulsed erratically. It sang, and she knew how to listen. Blade's staff hovered beside him as if tethered to his will. He didn't grip it, it simply followed. No longer a weapon, now an extension of awareness. They stood in silence for several moments, letting the resonance settle between them. Then the wind moved, but not from outside. It came from within the chamber walls. The stone pulsed once, then bloomed into light. A voice echoed through it, old, calm, unmistakable. You've stepped beyond thought, beyond need. You've stepped into what always was. I am no longer with you, but I never left. Master Fang. Phoenix closed her eyes, her heart tightened. You have touched the way. Now you must carry it. Snake builds with ego. You must dissolve his walls with presence, not power. Do not fight him, unmake him, with silence, with truth. The light faded, and the message ended. They stood in stillness. No one cried. No one spoke. The chamber began to fade, not collapse, just dissolve back into the field, as if it had never been carved at all. White Wolf was the first to speak. He's waiting for us. No, Blade said. He's watching. Violet raised her hand, the ring now projecting thin golden lines in midair, a map of resonance across the planet. Phoenix touched it gently. One tower pulsed brighter than the rest, a black point at the center of the web. Snake's stronghold, the heart of the synthetic grid. Then let's stop watching, she said. Let's bring the field to him. The others nodded. The way no longer whispered. It called. Chapter 10. The Master's Release. The stronghold wasn't hidden. It was proud. A black tower of angled metal rising from a hollow valley, wrapped in resonance-dampening fields that pulsed like a heartbeat. Energy spiraled upward in silent bursts, the center of Snake's synthetic grid. From the outside, it looked impenetrable. To the fore aligned, it looked fragile. Everything in this place is trying to forget it's made of light, Phoenix whispered. Let's remind it. No alarm tripped as they approached. No guards attacked. The Shadow Walkers didn't appear. They want us here, Blade said. Snake wants to see, Violet replied. He's testing the field's response to us. White Wolf placed his palm on the outer wall. It shimmered and opened. Not with force, with recognition. They stepped inside. The hallways were lit by anti-light, not darkness, but the absence of resonance. Every surface was sterile, mechanical, humming with dead harmony, like a song that forgot its own melody. Phoenix held her ring high. It glowed, then dimmed. Something's dampening the field here, she said. Let it, Blade replied. It only means we're close. They moved through the complex. No resistance, only silence. And finally, at the center, a room of mirrors. In the middle, seated on the floor, cross-legged and still, Master Fang. He didn't look imprisoned. He looked peaceful, calm. His eyes were closed, his breath invisible, as if he'd been part of the structure all along. Phoenix stepped forward. Master. His eyes opened. He smiled. You made it. They circled him. No guards, Violet said. No defenses. Why? Because I am not here to be defended, Fang said. I am here to complete your awakening. Blade narrowed his eyes. You let them take you. Fang nodded. I walked here. Phoenix sank to her knees. We thought you weren't wrong, he said. You were only unfinished. Fang stood slowly, the light from the mirrors catching in his robes like water flowing uphill. You believed this place held me, he said, but a prison made of false resonance cannot hold one who is let go. Violet stepped forward, confused. Then why stay? Because Snake needed me to stay, Fang said, and you needed to find me, choosing to. Blade crossed his arms. He used you as bait. No, Fang said. I used myself as a doorway. He walked to the edge of the room where the mirrors hummed with quiet distortion, reflecting not their bodies but warped versions of their faces, doubts, fears, ego, control. This tower is not built from metal, Fang said. It's built from belief. Snake's belief that control is power. That illusion can become truth if enforced long enough. Phoenix looked around. Then how do we break it? You do not break what was never real, Fang said. You remember what is. He turned toward each of them. White Wolf, your stillness is the wind that unmakes stone. Violet, your mind no longer resists the unknown. Now it listens. Blade, your strength was never forged in fury, but in choice. And Phoenix, he stepped to her. You carry the fire, not to burn the world, but to light it. A quiet pulse echoed through the tower. The synthetic field shivered. Snake had felt them. Fang smiled. He will come now, not because he must, but because he cannot resist being seen. Then what do we do? Blade asked. You sit, Fang said. You breathe. And you remember that none of this is solid. Phoenix looked at her ring. It pulsed, not outward, inward. The mirrors around them began to ripple. Walls flickered, ceilings faded. The structure, the steel, the silence, all began to unravel. Not through force, through presence. Snake had built a fortress of illusion. But now it had been seen by those who no longer agreed with it, and the illusion was beginning to let go. Chapter 11. The Melting of Ego. The tower trembled, not from an explosion, not from attack, but from something deeper. The foundation of agreement was beginning to dissolve. Snake stepped into the chamber, alone. No shadow walkers, no armor, no weapon, just him. Black coat, calm eyes, the hum of resonance flickering along his spine like a second pulse. I see, he said softly. You've found your harmony. He looked to Phoenix. To think it would be you, the one who doubted her own fire. To Violet. You searched for truth in machines. Now you pretend it was always in silence. To White Wolf. Still playing shaman, I see. But you forget, wolves still bleed. And finally, to Blade. You, the soldier who walked away, yet here you are, armed and angry. Blade didn't move. None of them did. Snake circled slowly. You've come to stop me, but there's nothing to stop. I am already winning. The field bends to me now, not because I control it, but because I understand what it fears. Fang, standing at the center, smiled faintly. Do you hear yourself? He asked. Snake turned. What? You speak of understanding, but every word is a shield. Snake stepped forward. The world doesn't need poetry. It needs order. No, Fang replied. It needs presence. Snake's ring pulsed sharply, artificial resonance humming along his veins. I built something you were afraid to, Snake said. A new order, a mind field that obeys, not this chaos, not this endless waiting for awakening. You didn't build a field, Phoenix said quietly. You built a cage. Snake's jaw twitched. And you've all come to destroy it. No, Violet said. We've come to stop agreeing with it. Snake raised a hand. His ring glowed and the chamber shifted. The walls grew taller, the light dimmed. Reality bent. He was trying to pull them into illusion, but they didn't resist, because resistance would make it real. They simply stood still, and the illusion collapsed. Snake stepped back, eyes wide. "What are you doing?" White Wolf exhaled. "Nothing." "That's not possible." Blade took a step forward, his voice calm. "You wanted to bend the world because you couldn't bend yourself." Snake's hand shook. His ring pulsed wildly now, glitching, struggling to hold the illusion together. "I gave humanity a path," he said. "A path of structure, of control. A path of fear," Fang finished, "and now it's melting." The tower flickered again, but now it wasn't trembling. It was letting go. Each floor, each wall, each steel surface built from belief began to fade, dissolve like ash in sunlight. Snake stepped backward as if trying to retreat into structure that no longer existed. "You think this is peace?" he shouted, "letting everything fall apart? No control, no shield, no power?" Violet walked calmly to him. "You never understood power," she said. "You only feared its silence." Snake's breathing turned sharp. His hand grasped at his ring, trying to feed it more resonance. But the energy recoiled from him. His control was too narrow, too unnatural. Blade approached. "We all carried pain, but we didn't turn it into a system." White Wolf added, "We learned to let it pass through us. You caged it, and now you're trapped with it." Snake looked to Fang. "Say something," he begged. "Tell them what it's like to live in a world that refuses to listen." Fang bowed his head gently. "I spent my life listening, and now, finally, the world is beginning to hear." Snake trembled. The chamber, now entirely light, reflected his shape like a shadow, alone, isolated in a brightness he no longer understood. And then Phoenix stepped forward. She didn't accuse. She didn't challenge. She just looked at him, deeply, silently, with eyes not of fire but of understanding, and said one sentence, "You never needed to win. You only needed to be seen." Snake froze. His ring stopped pulsing. The last illusion cracked. The chamber cleared, and the man once known as Snake sank slowly to the ground. No longer a villain, just a soul that forgot it was light. Chapter 12. The Ring Beyond Form. The tower was gone. Not destroyed, dissolved. The land where it once stood now hummed with gentle resonance. Wildflowers already grew through the cracks. A breeze moved through the valley, light and clean, like the earth exhaling after a long, silent breath. Snake was still. Not dead, only quiet. He sat beneath the open sky, no ring on his hand, no mask on his face, just a man with nothing left to control. Fang sat beside him, not as master and fallen student, just as two beings in stillness. The four heroes stood on the hill above, watching the sunrise bloom like a flame from the horizon. "Feels simple," Blade said. "It always was," White Wolf answered. Violet's ring pulsed faintly. "The grid is gone, but the world's still asleep. Most won't even know what almost happened." Phoenix closed her eyes. "They're not supposed to." They walked down into the valley, past the place where illusions once stood. Each step was light, each breath easy. Fang rose to greet them. "Is it over?" Violet asked. "No," Fang said, "but it has begun." Snake stood slowly. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were clear. He looked to Phoenix, then to his own hands. "I spent so long trying to bend the world to my will." "And now?" Phoenix asked gently. Snake looked up at the sky. "Now, I just want to feel it." They left the valley as quietly as they had arrived. No media, no governments, just wind and dirt and sky. Later, in the last quiet grove of the old world, Fang gathered them once more. "You've seen the illusion," he said, "and you've remembered the truth, that the world is made of spinning light, that matter is choice, that presence is power." He held out his hand, and the 4 rings rose into the air, but this time they didn't orbit their bearers. They melted into light and vanished. "The rings were never power," Fang said. "They were reminders." Blade looked at his bare hand. "And now?" "Now," Fang smiled, "you become the reminder." One by one, they left the grove. Blade to the conflict zones of the world, where war was still sold as strength, but where silence could sometimes stop a bullet. Violet to the cities, where machines whispered to those who listened, and the field glowed beneath glass and concrete. White Wolf to the wilds, where forgotten tribes still danced to frequencies no antenna could catch. And Phoenix. She stood on the mountain for one last moment, her arms open to the wind. Then she vanished in a blink of gold. Not gone, just everywhere. Epilogue. They say the world didn't change that day. No buildings fell, no skies cracked open, no saviors crowned. But some people started waking up in the middle of the night, remembering dreams they'd never had. Some could feel the breath of the trees again. Some started seeing colors in sound, and some, just once, swore they saw someone walking through a wall of stone, smiling. The end. The way cannot be held, only followed.